the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. It's a simple plan, but is it genius or is it a disaster? Popularized by Elizabeth Warren and her book back in 2005, it's one of the most popular budgeting systems out there. Heck, even if you do a Google search for best budgeting rules, this rule comes up in almost all search results. The rule says that out of your net income, so income after taxes have been taken out, 50% or half of that should go to your needs, 30% should go to your wants, and 20% goes to your savings. Now, maybe this worked 15 years ago, but in today's world with so many different changing parts, I don't think a static distribution like this will work. So in this video, we'll be going over what the 50-30-20 budgeting rule is, break down the pros and cons of it, and then go over my thoughts on what I think is a better budgeting system that you should use instead. Hey, I'm Kevin, and on this channel, we talk strategies to help you along on your financial journey. If you want to best set yourself up for financial success in the future, let me know by smashing that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's get started. So again, the 50-30-20 budgeting rule is what tells you the percentage of your net income that you should be putting in each bucket. Now, remember I say net income. So that means if you make a $75,000 salary, after you take out all your taxes and stuff, you'll be left with maybe $50,000. So make sure you're using that number instead. When you have that number, then half of that, or 50%, should go into your basic needs. Now, lots of people get kind of confused on what exactly qualifies as a basic needs, but these are things that you absolutely must pay for in order to survive. This includes basics like food and water, basic clothing, shelter, transportation, utilities, and even healthcare and education. I'd even consider having internet a basic need. I mean, fun fact, the UN declared the internet a basic human right. Now, this 50% is to cover your basic needs. That means, yes, you may need internet, but you probably don't need gigabit internet. You need a place to stay, but you don't need to spend on an entire mansion. A great way to save could be to live with roommates, or try living with your parents for as long as you can. Because for most people, living costs is the bulk of the spend from their income. And if you're able to save on that, you can really get ahead of the game. So personally, I think 50% is a really large chunk of your income to spend on basic needs. If you're already spending over 50%, then I'd say look into ways of reducing that spend, like getting a roommate or moving to a place that cost of living is lower, or learning to cook at home so you don't have to eat out as much. The goal here is to lower the spend on these basic needs as much as possible in order to get more income to divert to more important places like savings and investments. If you really can't cut down on this, then maybe it's time to look into how to increase your income. Maybe learn a high income skill that you can do on the side, or get a part-time job or a higher paying job that you qualify for, or even start something like a side hustle. In fact, I remember seeing that a lot of people were making a couple $100s a day, going around door knocking and offering to paint house numbers on the side of the street curb for $20 each. There are a ton of ways to make money out there. You just need to put in the time and effort. So with half of your income gone just like that, the rule says that the next 30% should go into your wants. You want to go to that fancy Michelin star restaurant, you want gigabit internet, you want a nicer car, you want a nicer place. This is your budget. There's a surprising number of people that get this mixed up. Like, they'll spend over half of their income on things like wants instead of the other way around. What's worse is that people will go into debt to fund these wants, especially if their basic needs aren't even covered yet. This is probably why almost half of all Americans are carrying credit card debt. Now, I'm not saying cut out all your wants, but 30% spend on this area is pretty high, especially if you're already struggling to spend 50% on your needs. What you'll find interesting is that a lot of these wants, especially the more materialistic things, yes, will give you a short jolt of happiness in the short term, but in the long term, it'll diminish. That's because of the concept of the hedonic treadmill, which says that good things or bad things can happen, which will alter your happiness in the short term, but over time, you'll eventually come back to baseline. So keep that in mind when thinking about if you really need something or want something. All right, so now that basically 80% of your income is gone, the rule says that the last 20% of your income should be put into savings and paying down any of your debt. The first part of this money should go into your emergency fund, which is a 3 to 6 month of your expenses in a savings account that can be easily accessible in order to give you a cushion in case anything unexpected comes up, like loss of a job or unexpected bills. Of course, we hope that we'll never need to use this, But just by having this, it gives you that type of peace of mind that you can handle anything life throws at you, and that you don't need to go into debt in order to fund any unexpected expenses that come up. In fact, just by having $1,000 in your emergency fund already puts you way ahead in the game, because most millennials don't even have enough to cover a $1,000 emergency. Then after that, you want to pay down all of your debt. And you can check out my video on the top right corner on how to do that. Then after that, put money into your retirement savings, like your 401ks and IRAs. Also have a video for that down in the description. To be honest, I think the 20% distribution in this area is way too low. I mean, it doesn't even mention anything to do with investing, which should be a significant part of anyone's income distribution. On the other hand, if you have any type of debt, especially high interest debt, so anything higher than like a 4 or 5%, then 20% towards that is definitely way too low. In that case, I'd say just spend enough to cover your basic needs, then dump everything else into trying to pay down this debt as soon as possible so you can get yourself in a nice clean state and then start from there. With so many issues using the 50-30-20 rule, what is a better way of budgeting? Well, right before we get into that, if you're enjoying this content so far and you want to support the channel, consider subscribing if you haven't yet and liking this video to help push this out to a wider audience. So about the budgeting system, I really don't think a static distribution like 50-30-20 will work for most people, especially because of all the dynamics that play into this, like different salaries, cost of living, what your priorities are, and all those type of things. And because of that, I'd recommend more of a list of priorities that you should be putting your money to, starting from the top going down the list. First, I do agree that the main thing you want covered would be your basic needs. Keyword basic. This includes your basic food, so nothing fancy, no Michelin star restaurants. Learn to cook good healthy food yourself and meal prep. There's actually a dedicated subreddit to this about eating cheap and healthy, which I'll link down below. Then there's your shelter. Remember, consider living with roommates or staying with their parents in order to cut down the cost there. And then transportation, utilities, healthcare, education, and all that stuff. Remember, your goal here is to keep your spend on your minimum basic needs as low as possible. Next, build out your emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. Like I mentioned earlier, you want this to give you a peace of mind and a buffer for anything unexpected that you have to pay for, and that you don't have to go into an even worse financial situation just to cover those costs. After that, pay down all of your high interest debt. So anything higher than 4 or 5% interest. I'd recommend to use the avalanche method, as that'll save you the most on interest payments over the entire payment schedule, but you could use the snowball method as well. More on those two methods down in the description. Then after that, save but invest. Because if you don't invest and you just save your money, you're getting poorer and poorer every year because of inflation, especially inflation being at 2-3% plus. So invest, and invest early. And if you want to know how to invest and what to invest in, I just so happen to have a video on that as well. Link up top and down in the description. I'd recommend the highest allocation of your income into this saving and investing bucket. Then after you have all that down and you're in a comfortable spot, spend some on yourself and what you enjoy and what makes you happy. Live and enjoy life. So with all that said, I hope you can see why the popular 50-30-20 budgeting rule will probably not work for most people, because life is just dynamic. And with so many different factors playing into it, a static distribution like that just won't cut it anymore. Instead, you should stay organized and make sure you keep track of where all your spend is going, so you can readjust and make sure your priorities are as you think they should be. Spend on your basic needs, build up an emergency fund, pay down your high interest debt, save, and I really can't stress this enough, but start investing, because 10 years from now, you'll look back and thank yourself for it. Trust me. Once you've done all that and maybe increased your income or gotten used to how much you're spending and budgeting and all that, then maybe you can ease off a bit and look at things at a higher level like inflows and outflows. But start small, build good habits, and work your way up. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this video was informative and helped at least one of you set yourself up for a better financial future. As always, invest safe and see you in the next one.